So let's go ahead and just I don't see a ton of rising fish right now. I've seen a few, but let's just go ahead and get our fly out there and let it sit on the water for maybe 15 to 20 seconds before we would cast again, okay? Okay, so let's put our sunglasses both on. We're gonna bring out that casting knowledge again. Go ahead and pull some line out of that rod. Go ahead and pull some line out of that rod. That's about the right amount. And then you grab the ewe that's farthest away from you right here, and you let go of that ewe. Yes, like that.
Am I doing the overhead cast?
You can do either one you prefer. Let's try the overhead cast right now while it's not super windy.
Sure there's nothing behind me?
Good job. Got a good memory. Good. Leave that one right there. And go ahead and pick that up and cast a little bit more towards the left into that shadow. With that roll cast, remember to keep it on the water, bring that rod tip up, and just punch it forward. On that last cast, you brought it behind you. So bring it up, pause. Yep, see how it went behind you again though? Unfortunately, that we'll lose the tension off the surface. So bring out a little bit more line. Go ahead, hold it right here. Start to gently lift it up and pause. So lift, pause, now punch it forward. See how that gives you a little bit better oomph? Good. Watch that fly. This is where the patience comes into fly fishing. Sometimes you have to be very patient. Keep your rod tip low. The reason why for that is when we're setting the hook on the fish, if you think about it, if our rod tip is pointed low, we have a much larger window to set the hook. If it's up here, we just have a small window. Let's bring a little bit of line in. You can actually just strip it in. Yeah, just strip it in. And now keep that rod tip nice and low, pointing right at your fly. So Brooke, since they seem to not be feeding on the surface anymore, we're going to try something below the surface.
Okay.
Right here I have a little streamer. This is designed to look like a small minnow or fish swimming around. We fish it differently. So I'm going to grab this from you. We're going to put it away for a sec. So with our new fly rod, we have the streamer fly on it. It's made out of rabbit fur, so we need to actually get it a little bit wet in order for it to sink correctly. Get this guy undone. Okay, so see how it looks like a little fish all of a sudden? If you put it in there, see how it can look like a little fish swimming? Mm-hmm. The way that we make it look that way, once we cast it out there, it's going to feel a lot heavier to cast, but once I get it out there, I'm going to keep my rod tip down, touching the water, and I'm going to start to pull it through the water, just like that. See, this is called stripping the line. As I get it in there, this is important whenever you're casting. You need to know how to strip the line. So once I get it in there, rod tip down, I put this line underneath my index finger in my right hand, and I begin to pull at lengths of maybe 3 to 5 inches, and keep the timing consistent. However, sometimes, you want to strip really fast, make it look like a certain kind of fish, or maybe slower if it's really cold outside, because fish would be swimming around slower anyway. You can change up that speed and cadence depending on what works best. So you can see that fish on the surface, right? Or that little fly?
Yep.
Looking like a little minnow. Nothing over there. We're going to see if anything comes up. Let's see. Where'd you go, fish? So I'm going to have you take a few casts. And Brooke, the difference of setting the hook on a streamer fly compared to a dry fly, remember I said you lift up with a dry fly? If you think about it, if a trout is chasing a streamer fly, it's not going to grab it and swim down. It's just going to grab it, right? Because it's chasing a fish versus coming up to the surface.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is just continue stripping the line. Stripping the line will set the hook in the fish's mouth.
Okay.
So when I say, if you feel something, any sort of tug or any movement, continue just to pull until the fish is on the line. You'll feel it struggling back, okay? So let's go ahead and have you cast it out there. And if you feel tug, a common mistake is people just stop doing everything. Just keep stripping.
Am I okay with that rod behind me?
Yeah, you're okay with that. Okay, nice and slow on the back cast. 1, 2. Oops, good. Let's try. I have a better idea. We're gonna go ahead and, just because this is a heavy fly and it can be a little bit hard sometimes to cast when you're learning. You get this little knot out real quick. If you go ahead and hold this. So whenever there's a knot that appears, see this guy right here? We always want to make sure you get that out, because if we were to hook a fish and there's a knot in our line, it affects the integrity of our line, meaning that all of a sudden we don't have as much strength in our leader or line and it can break at that point. So we always want to make sure you take out any knots when possible. I'm just going to get a little bit more line in. For this, I don't want you to worry about shooting any line. I just want you to focus on the line that's out. So see how I'm going 1, 2, 3?
Yep.
And then strip that in. You can pull out even a little bit more, but don't worry about like the letting line out or holding on the back cast. Just go ahead and, yeah.
Start with what, this
Yeah,
much?
that's good right there. Let's try that. Brooke, that looks so good. Yes, good. Rod tip all the way down, touching the water. Good. That's specific to fishing a streamer fly. Yep. Keep stripping. Keep stripping. A little bit faster. Make it look like a little minnow swimming through the water. Keep stripping. Keep stripping all the way in. Keep stripping. Okay.
Okay.
I want you to start to focus on getting the line on the reel. Yes, just like that. Keep that rod nice and high, even higher. There needs to be more tension. See how there's a little slack?
Yep.
We've got too much slack. Keep it nice and high. Good, even higher. Yep. You can even back up if you need to. I'm right here. Okay, keep reeling really fast. Get on there. Keep reeling, keep reeling. Take your finger off the line. Keep reeling. Keep reeling. There's way too much slack in that line. We want it to be nice and straight. Keep reeling. Yes, good. We want that rod tip to be bent and facing downwards. Keep reeling. You're going to step forward up this way a little bit. Yep. If it goes that way, bring your rod tip left. Remember? Good. Good. Higher, higher. Good. I'm going to go ahead and net it right now. Nice job, Brooke. First fish on a fly rod.
Sweet.
Go ahead and you can kneel down here with me. So the fish has it perfectly hooked right in the mouth, which is great. We're going to give it a little bit of slack, so you want to keep that fish fully in the water in the net. And as long as he's in the water, he's safe. We just don't want to bring him out of the water where he can't breathe. So in order to get the hook out, I have a pair of pliers here that are going to help me.
Okay.
But there is no barb, so it might be really easy just to pull the fly out. We have him here in this silicone net. We make sure that before we touch the fish, we go ahead and we wet our hands. So go ahead and wet your hands. I'll hold the fly rod for you. And you can go ahead and gently cradle the fish. Try not to squeeze him too much and pull out that fly with the other hand. Yep. And now go ahead and put him gently into the water and he should swim away. We can put him actually in the net real quick. So I'll show you how to release him. We got the hook out. Now to release him, I'm going to show you on this fish and let you try another one, okay?
Okay.
See how I'm gently holding him? If I squeeze him, he starts to panic. So very gently cradling him. He's underneath the water and he just swims right out of my hand.
Perfect.
Sometimes if you're in a river or you catch a bigger fish that maybe had a harder fight, you need to nurse them back to health. So sometimes I move them back really gently back and forth in the water to get water through their gills. And I just want to make sure that they have enough energy before I send them back into the current or they could drown. So that's what we do, is we let them wait until they're ready to swim away and they gently swim away out of our hands.
Exciting.
Yay, Brooke, nice job. One thing I want to also bring up is in fly fishing, there's a lot of different nets out there. I really like this net because it has a silicone basket, or this net bag right here is made out of silicone. Remember I had you wet your hands before you touch the fish?
Yep.
Fish have a protective slime on them. It helps keep them safe from bacteria and fungus and other things that might make them sick and infection. So when we wet our hands, we have less likelihood of taking that slime off of them. Whereas if we have dry hands, it's gonna take it off and you're gonna feel it. It's gonna be slimy on your hands. But as you can feel right now, they don't feel slimy, right?
Nope, not at all.
So wetting your hands is super essential and important before you ever touch a fish. The silicone basket also has the same effect where it doesn't pull that protective slime off the fish. It's a lot more gentle, whereas one that's made out of netting or fabric is a lot more abrasive on a fish.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and have you keep casting and see if we can get another one. What I'm going to do before we go ahead and cast again, this is super important to know. Once you land a fish, our fly was in the fish's mouth, right? So that means it's probably really wet and drenched. So we have to go ahead and check out our fly, make sure everything's okay, make sure it's not falling apart, but also make sure that it stays nice and dry for the next fish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some dry shake to it. Dry shake is going to keep it nice and water resistant, floating on the surface. In the early part of the day, we used a silicone gel that kept it from getting too waterlogged and sinking down. So now that I've used floatin', this is a really helpful tip, especially for those that already fly fish. If you like to fly fish and you have gink and dry shake, the tip is you only use gink in the beginning part of the day when your fly is completely dry. If you put that gel, that gink stuff on a wet fly, it will actually sink more. So that's why we have the dry shake. That's to use once your fly gets wet.
Okay.
So we have our dry shake right here. Shake it up. We're gonna go ahead and put it in here. The great thing about this stuff is that it's not bad for the environment. Doesn't hurt anything around us. And see how nice and fluffy it is? I blow on it a little bit. I might do one more shake with it. Now it's gonna float really well. So Brooke, when we cast it out there and say we get a fish that comes up and bites our fly, it's a measure between understanding when to keep tension on the rod, but also at the same time reel in the line. So you'll notice if you hook into a fish, I might say reel, reel, pull in line, strip in line. What I mean is I'm watching the fish, and as it's swimming maybe closer to us, all of a sudden, if it's closer to us in distance, we have to pull some line in quickly to create tension on the rod, right? Mm-hmm. The most important thing is to always have tension, and you can tell if you have tension if your rod tip is bent. If you have a fish on the line and the rod tip just looks like it's going straight up, you don't have enough tension. So you need to pull in line, strip in line. But as soon as you get enough tension where the rod tip is bent, then you want to focus on getting the line on the reel. So it's a balance, and sometimes you just have to do it a fair bit to be able to understand how much you need to do of each. But think about always keeping tension on that fish while he's on the end of the hook. If there's no tension, he can easily wiggle off our hook. If there is tension, it's hard for him to get the angle to come off of the hook. So, say we get a fish on the next cast, I want you to go ahead and set the hook, and then I want you to immediately start to get him on the reel. Say that fish starts to swim towards us. All of a sudden, we've lost a little bit of tension. You can tell because your rod tip is no longer bent. So you're going to go ahead and pause from reeling and pull in a little bit of line until you see your rod tip bend again. As soon as it feels bent and there's tension, you're going to go back to trying to get that line on the reel. As soon as you get all of the line on the reel, you want to take your right finger off of the floating line, and you want to just let the reel do the work for you. If the fish starts to swim towards you at that point, you reel in a little bit, and that will create that tension again. Does that all make sense?
Yep.
Okay. We've got one. Anytime, Brooks, there's any slack, I pull in a little bit of line to keep the tension. Okay, I want you to go ahead and take that over. Remember to hold that line. Yep. Good.
Oh, there's a big one next to it.
Really? Oh, you're right. Wow, that's cool. It's getting the attention of other fish. Okay, keep that rod nice and high above you. A little bit higher. Yes, good job, Brooke. Even a little bit higher. See how there's no more bend? You will always want to bend in the end of your rod. Keep reeling. Keep reeling. There's no bend. Keep reeling. That means there's too much slack. Good. That's good bend. Okay, now go and let go of that line. Oops, sorry. And keep that rod nice and high. No more reeling at this point. Just keep it nice and high and walk over towards me and start to lift that rod so his head lifts out of the water. Nice, Brooke. Woo! Second fish. I'm gonna keep him the Brooke. These are called hemostats or pliers or forceps. These are nice and narrow, so it's easy to get into the fish's mouth. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and minimize touching the fish if I can, just to get the hook out. Again, it's debarbed, so as long as the fish is fully in the water, the fish will be just fine. I'm gonna wet my hand, gently cradle the fish. Make sure he's staying nice and wet in the water. As soon as I can get the angle to grab that fly out. See how it came out super easy with the debarbed hook? I'm gonna go ahead and keep him in the net, keep him in the water. So we're gonna go ahead and release him back. Look, see how he'll just gently stay in my hand. He's not in any rush to leave yet.
Yeah.
He's probably in a little bit of shock and he's probably kind of scared, but he's also just catching his breath essentially. So I'm gently, very gently moving him back and forth. You don't want to do that too rough. Very gently, give him a little wiggle. He might be a little too comfy here. There he goes. He's gone.
Hi, buddy.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
Nice work.